October 1949. The air inside the Yale mathematics department is thick with the scent of aging paper, chalk dust, and the quiet, crushing weight of tradition. In a wood-paneled room, before a panel of stern-faced men, a 27-year-old woman named Evelyn Boyd Granville stands her ground. She is not just defending a dissertation, she is dismantling a fortress from within. Her work, on Laguerre series in the complex domain, is a dense, elegant exploration of function theory, a topic so abstract it seems a world away from the segregated society just outside these Gothic walls. But for her, the abstract and the real are inseparable. Every theorem she proves, every lemma she defends, is a counter-argument to a world that has already passed its judgment on her. As she speaks, her voice steady and clear, she is not just a scholar. She is an anomaly, a statistical improbability. A black woman on the verge of earning a Ph.D. in mathematics from Yale University. The academic world, still largely segregated and male-dominated, barely acknowledged the magnitude of this achievement. When the panel finally concedes, when the title of doctor is officially hers, the moment is both monumental and eerily quiet. There are no press conferences, no celebratory headlines in major newspapers. History notes that in this same year, Marjorie Lee Brown earned her mathematics Ph.D. from the University of Michigan. Together, they became the first two African-American women in the nation's history to achieve this milestone. It should have been a watershed moment, a story of triumph celebrated from coast to coast. Instead, it was a whisper, a footnote in an academic ledger. The system had granted her a key, but it had no intention of showing her which doors it might unlock. Her brilliance was now certified, a weapon she had forged herself, but the battlefield remained hostile, rigged with invisible tripwires of prejudice. The real-world application of her genius was an unsolved equation. The America she stepped into with her doctorate was a nation of paradoxes. It was a country that could split the atom but could not stomach sharing a water fountain. It was building the intellectual infrastructure for the digital age while violently enforcing the archaic social codes of Jim Crow. For Dr. Granville, this meant the most prestigious universities, the very institutions that should have been clamoring for a mind like hers, were effectively closed to her. Archival hiring records from the era are a testament to this systemic exclusion. A 1950 report from the American Mathematical Society reveals a near-complete absence of women, let alone black women in tenure-track positions at major research universities. Letters from academic deans at the time, now stored in university archives, often contained coded language about collegiality and fit, euphemisms for maintaining a homogeneous white male faculty. She was qualified to teach the most complex mathematics known to man, but she would have been barred from sitting in the front of a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. This was the core of the injustice. Her intellect was boundless, but her opportunities were bordered by her race and gender. She took a position at Fisk University, a historically black college in Nashville, a place of intellectual refuge, but one that was systematically underfunded and cut off from the primary research networks of the day. The resources were a world away from the hallowed libraries of Yale. While her white male counterparts with similar credentials were being courted by Princeton, Harvard, and the burgeoning defense industry, she was teaching calculus to undergraduates, a vital role, but one that fell far short of her potential for groundbreaking research. The systemic friction was immense. Grant applications from HBCUs were disproportionately rejected, as documented by reports from the National Science Foundation in its early years. The informal networks of collaboration, the Old Boys Club, where research ideas were shared over dinner and careers were made, were entirely inaccessible. Her achievement was a personal victory against a system that was designed to ensure she never even got the chance to compete. It was a quiet, lonely revolution, a testament to a resilience forged in the face of relentless systemic disregard. The world had a mind capable of charting pathways to other worlds, but it seemed determined to keep her grounded, to confine her orbit to the margins.
This wasn't just a personal triumph against the odds. It was a glaring indictment of a system that valued pedigree and prejudice over pure, unadulterated genius. And it posed a critical, urgent question. How would a mind so powerful find its place when society was so determined to deny it? October 1949.
October 1949. Following that groundbreaking Ph.D., the question of where her mind could go found an unexpected answer, not in the hallowed halls of academia that had reluctantly credentialed her, but in the burgeoning digital frontier of the Cold War. The very system that barred her from its most prestigious professorships was, out of sheer necessity, creating a new arena where her skills were not just valuable, but indispensable. After a brief period teaching at Fisk and a research position at the National Bureau of Standards, Dr. Granville made a pivotal move in 1956. She joined International Business Machines, IBM. Here, the currency was not tenure or tradition, it was computational power. The space race was igniting, and the raw intellectual horsepower required to leave Earth's atmosphere was a demand that transcended, to a degree, the petty bigotries of the era. The universe, after all, did not care about the race or gender of the person calculating its trajectories. At IBM, Granville was thrust into the heart of America's most ambitious technological endeavor. She was assigned to the team working on Project Vanguard for the U.S. Navy, and later the newly formed National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. Her job was to write the code that would tell rockets where to go. She developed critical computer programs for NASA's Project Mercury and Apollo programs, meticulously calculating orbital mechanics and trajectory paths. To understand the magnitude of this work, we have to step back to a time before software was a product you could buy. In the 1950s and 60s, a program was a painstakingly constructed logical tapestry woven together on thousands of punch cards. A single misplaced hole, a single error in a line of Fortran or assembly code could mean the difference between a successful orbit and a catastrophic failure. Granville was a pioneer in this new field of scientific programming. She and her team were translating the classical celestial mechanics of Newton and Kepler into a language that a room-sized IBM 704 mainframe could understand. Her algorithms had to account for a dizzying array of variables: Earth's gravitational pull, the gravitational influence of the Moon and Sun, atmospheric drag during re-entry, the precise thrust of the rocket engines, and the ever-changing positions of celestial bodies. These were not simple back-of-the-envelope calculations. They were complex, multivariable differential equations that required iterative solutions. The computer would run millions of calculations to approximate the perfect path. Her work on Project Mercury, as documented in internal IBM technical reports from the era, was foundational. She helped build the global tracking network, the system of computers that would follow the tiny capsule carrying astronauts like John Glenn as it hurtled through space at 17,500 miles per hour. Her code helped determine the precise moment for retrofire, ensuring the spacecraft would re-enter the atmosphere at the correct angle. Too steep and it would burn up, too shallow and it would skip off the atmosphere like a stone on water. The lives of the astronauts were, quite literally, dependent on the accuracy of her logic. Yet, while the nation held its breath watching the televised launches, while the names Glenn, Shepard, and Armstrong were being etched into the American mythos, a profound act of erasure was taking place. The faces of the space race were the heroic, white male test pilots. The names on the press releases were the mission directors and lead engineers. But in the control rooms and the back offices, in the quiet hum of the data centers, it was women like Evelyn Boyd Granville, Katherine Johnson, and Dorothy Vaughan who were the silent architects of these triumphs. They were the human computers and the pioneering programmers whose intellectual labor was the invisible scaffolding holding the entire enterprise aloft. The systemic resistance was no longer a locked door, but a curtain of anonymity. Whose names were etched onto the mission reports and whose were quietly omitted from public view? The answer is found in the very structure of the contracts. Granville was an IBM employee on loan to NASA. Her work and that of her team was often credited simply to IBM, a corporate monolith that obscured the individual brilliance within. The patents, the public accolades, the history books, they would tell a simplified, sanitized story. A story that for decades had no room for a brilliant black woman who had literally charted the course to the stars. From the quiet hum of those IBM mainframes, a legacy was launched that orbited far beyond the moon. But the answer to whose name was remembered and whose was not reveals a different kind of trajectory, one of influence, education, and a slow, determined fight for recognition. After her pivotal contributions to the Mercury and Apollo programs, Dr. Granville's path took a deliberate turn. She had seen firsthand how a single brilliant mind could alter the course of history, but she had also lived the reality of a system that actively discouraged countless other minds from ever reaching their potential. So she decided to build the future herself. In the late 1960s, she left the high-pressure world of the aerospace industry and accepted a teaching position at California State University, Los Angeles. This was not a retreat, it was a redeployment. Her mission now was to cultivate the next generation of thinkers. Her textbooks and pedagogical innovations shaped how complex mathematical concepts were taught, demystifying fields she had mastered. This shift was deeply informed by the social upheaval of the time. The 1967 Watts riots in Los Angeles laid bare the deep inequities in education and opportunity for minority communities. For Granville, this was a call to action. She saw the power of mathematics not just as a tool for space exploration, but as a tool for social empowerment. She co-authored a textbook, Theory and Application of Mathematics for Teachers, aiming to improve the quality of math education at the elementary school level. Her philosophy was simple but profound. To build a nation of scientists and engineers, you must first build a nation of inspired and confident students. Her classroom became a laboratory for a different kind of experiment, one designed to prove that genius was not the province of any single race or gender. The evidence of her impact is found not in mission logs, but in the careers of the thousands of students she taught over several decades. Testimonials from former students, collected in university alumni archives, speak of a professor who was not only brilliant but deeply committed to their success. She broke down complex ideas with a clarity born of true mastery. But more importantly, she served as living proof that the highest levels of science were accessible to them. This educational legacy is now being formally recognized. UNESCO reports on STEM education and equity frequently cite the crucial role of visible role models like Granville in diversifying the scientific workforce. Academic retrospectives on the history of computing, like those published in the Annals of the History of Computing, have begun the slow work of reinserting her name into the narrative, detailing her specific programming contributions that were once credited only to a corporation. While public recognition was slow, it did eventually come. An honorary doctorate from her alma mater, Smith College. A place in the National Academy of Engineering's gallery of portraits of African American scientists. These belated honors are important, but they also highlight a deep and troubling silence that lasted for decades. The resistance she faced was no longer the overt bigotry of the Jim Crow era, but the more insidious inertia of historical omission. The history of the space race had already been written, its heroes cast in bronze. Correcting that record required a conscious, deliberate effort to look behind the curtain, to read the technical manuals, and to ask the critical question, whose labor made this possible? Dr. Granville's story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Her genius was utilized when it was needed for the Cold War, but it was not celebrated until long after the race was won. We are left to ponder. How many more scientific leaps might have been accelerated? How many more minds ignited had her genius been celebrated from the start, rather than slowly unearthed by history? Her orbit was unseen for far too long, but its gravitational pull has reshaped our world.